Hi, welcome to another sneak peek Saturday with the Alameda Free Library. My name is Jenny, and today we're going to read Laziness Does Not Exist by Devon Price, PhD. This is a nonfiction book. It's in our news section. I'm going to read you the first chapter of this. So, it says the laziness does not exist, and then the subtitle is A Defense of the Exhausted, Exploited, and Overworked. Now, this is the entire title. All right. How I learned I wasn't lazy. I have a reputation as a productive person, but that reputation has cost me a lot. To the rest of the world, I've always looked like a put-together, organized, diligent little worker bee. For years, I managed to balance professional success, creative output, and activism without letting anybody in my life down. I never turned work in late. If I said I was going to be at an event, I'd be there. If a friend needed help editing a cover letter for a job application or moral support, as they called their congressional representative about the latest human rights horror of the moment, I was available. Behind that veneer of energy and dependability, I was a wreck. I'd spend hours alone in the dark, overstimulated and too tired to even read a book. I resented every person I said yes to, even as I couldn't stop overcommitting to them. I was forever spreading myself too thin, dragging myself from obligation to obligation, thinking my lack of energy made me unforgivably lazy. I know a lot of people like me. People who work overtime, never turning down additional work for fear of disappointing their boss. They're available to friends and loved ones 24/7, providing an unending stream of support and advice. They care about dozens and dozens of social issues, yet always feel guilty about not doing enough to address them because there simply aren't enough hours in the day. These types of people often try to cram every waking moment with activity. After a long day at work, they try to teach themselves Spanish on the Duolingo app on their phone, for example, or they try to learn how to code in Python on sites like Code Academy. People like this, people like me, and doing everything society has taught us we have to do if we want to be virtuous and deserving of respect. We're committed employees, passionate activists, considerate friends, and perpetual students. We worry about the future. We plan ahead. We try to reduce our anxiety by controlling the things we can't control, and we push ourselves to work very, very hard. Most of us spend the majority of our days feeling tired, overwhelmed, and disappointed in ourselves, certain we've come up short. No matter how much we've accomplished or how hard we've worked, we never believe we've done enough to feel satisfied or at peace. We never think we deserve a break. Through all the burnouts, stress-related illnesses, and sleep-deprived weekends we endure, we remain convinced that having limitations makes us lazy, and that laziness is always a bad thing. This worldview is ruining our lives. For years, I fell into an awful pattern where I'd work nonstop for the first 5 or 6 hours of the day, running through many tasks as possible without any breaks. During those periods, I'd focus so intently on the mountains of emails I had to respond to or the papers I had to grade that I would often forget to pause and eat a snack, stretch my legs, or even use the bathroom. Anyone who interrupted me during those cram sessions would get a blank, irritated stare. Once those 5 hours were over, I'd collapse into a cranky, hungry, emotionally drained heap. I loved being super efficient like that, plugging away all the items on my to-do list that had given me anxiety the night before. I could get a truly impressive amount of stuff done during those sprints. But when I worked myself that hard, I'd be completely useless afterward. My afternoons were utterly non-productive, with me mindlessly scrolling through Instagram or Tumblr for hours. In the evening, all I had energy left to do was flop onto my bed, watch a few YouTube videos, and eat chips in the dark of my apartment. Eventually, after a few hours of recharging, I'd start to feel guilty for not using my time in more productive ways. I should be out with friends. I tell myself, I should be working on creative projects. I should cook myself a nice, healthy dinner. I'd start to feel stress about everything I needed to accomplish the next day, and then the next morning, the cycle of guilt, overwork, and exhaustion would start up all over again. Even back then, I knew the cycle was bad for me, and yet I found it hard to break out of it. As terrible as my exhaustion felt, completing a huge pile of tasks in a couple of hours felt almost equally good. I lived to check things off to-do lists. I would get a rush when somebody would exclaim, "Wow, that was fast," because I'd emailed back sooner than they expected. I would agree to take on more responsibilities than I wanted to handle because I felt a deep need to show I was a diligent, reliable worker. And then, after putting so many tasks on my plate, I would inevitably flame out and become depressed or sick. For years, I would berate myself for running out of steam whenever I didn't push myself to the limit. I felt shame about being stagnant. Whenever I said no to a task at work, I'd worry I wasn't earning my keep. If I failed to help a friend, when they needed it or didn't make it to a protest I'd planned to go to or a concert a friend was performing in, I'd feel certain everyone was judging me. I was terrified that anytime I took a break or drew a boundary, I was being lazy. After all, there was nothing worse I could be than that. As awful as being tired, overwhelmed, and burned out with no energy for hobbies or friends was, surely, being lazy was worse. Probably not, but you should read it to find out. It's some good information in here. I really enjoyed this book. So if you want to come check it out, again, Laziness Does Not Exist by Devon Price. You can place a hold on it online, and you can call the library to make an appointment to come pick up your hold if you'd like to read this book. I hope you enjoyed this reading. Thanks for listening, and I see you next Saturday. Bye.